Hello, hello, hello. This is Adrienne Berg, and this is part two of our series, Your Passport to Longevity. And in part one, please go back and listen. If you haven't already listened, you will see how cognitively, with regard to our biology, with regard to our cell strength, it has been proven through studies of the National Institute on Aging, the National Institute on Health, here in the United States, also in Europe, also in the UK, that travel actually helps you live longer in so many ways. But in part two of Your Passport to Longevity, we're actually going to travel to 5 places so that we can see how people live who have extraordinary longevity and then take some of their protocols home and use them whether we're traveling or we are not, whether you're in your everyday world or on staycation or looking at the northern lights in Norway. You'll be able to take with you these protocols and your passport for longevity. Okay, so let's start. These 5 places are called blue zones. And blue zones were actually identified as part of a project. Many of you have heard the word blue zones. National Geographic and National Institute on Aging took a look at our world and said, wait a minute, something's going on here in certain places. People are actually living in those places up to age 100 on a regular basis, or even longer than that. And they're living to 100 and older at rates of 10 times the average in their continent, in their area. And they dubbed these 5 original places blue zones. And they went to see what these hot spots of longevity looked like, how the people lived. And what they discovered is probably more important to us than how long they were living. This is what they discovered, that there was less heart disease, less obesity, less diabetes. All of these diseases and of course, less cognitive decline, dementia and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's than the norm. Now, what is accounting for that? Is there something in the water in some of these places? Well, after a longevity study, and more than one, it was discovered that there are 8 or 9 things that are in the endemic lifestyle of each of these communities that promote longevity. And every one of them are things you can do yourself wherever you happen to live. So we're going to be talking about that on an individual basis and what you can do. We're also going to be encouraging you to take some of these wonderful trips to the places where you can actually observe this lifestyle. Maybe ingrain yourself in this lifestyle as part of a trip. And certainly we're going to talk about how on a practical basis you can convince the powers that be in your location to think about these blue zones and institute some of the things that would make it easier for you to live the longevity lifestyle. So let's just start with the 8 or 9 things that were observed in every one of these areas before we look at the areas themselves, each of which are wonderful tourist attractions in and of themselves. Now, some of these things, I would say, is what your mother told you to do. In fact, I had a geroscientist conversation when I was part of the Catalyst Institute for the delay and prevention of age-related diseases. Just about every one of them said, well, the things you should do and what they do at the blue zones is what your mother told you to do. And what are they? Well, first of all, move. M-O-V-E. Move your body. Don't be sedentary. Even if it's as simple as having a desk, which I just bought from Amazon. And it cost me $19.95. All I have to do is stand up, raise the lid, and I have a standing desk. Of course, as you know, if those of you who know me, I am a free walker. I walk on a regular basis. Baseline is about 5 miles a day, but free walkers can get up to 35 and even 50 miles a day, 18 miles a day for group walks together as part of our sightseeing or exercise program is not unusual. Bicycling does a lot for you too. Gardening, any kind of movement that's functional and appropriate for you is necessary, you'll see, in these 5 places, because many times you have to walk to get anywhere there, and you have to walk up and down hill. Next thing I find to be a wonderful inspiration and a motivation for all of us. And that is each of the communities that we're going to discuss and virtually visit on this show have responsibility for their neighbors. They have a life purpose. Even if they are older, even if their children are out of the nest, even if they're single, they are relied upon. Not that they rely upon, but they are relied upon by others. And they can rely on them. They have a life purpose, which is why here at the Ageless Traveler, one of the most important parts, I think, of the Ageless Traveler website, agelesstraveler.com, is our volunteering page. And we have so many podcasts about hero holidays and many other groups that offer the experience of volunteering. And then we have an arrangement with AmeriCorps for people over the age of 60 to volunteer at home once they have honed their skills through a volunteer experience. So life purpose is a second important thing. Then we have what's known as the 80% rule. One of the 5 places is Okinawa, and many of you know the Okinawa diet. They stop eating. Compared to us, they'll stop eating when they're about 80% full. Now, that's not easy for us because it's not our habit, and it's hard to know when we're 80% full. And we are culturally encouraged to eat until we are full and not to be happy until that happens. So what can you do instead? Well, my geroscience friends talk about something called autophagy, which is the cleaning out of the cells. They call it intermittent fasting. That's a big word, fasting. It really simply means that you don't eat between 14 and 16 hours in a period of time. So let's say you finish your dinner at 7. You don't have your breakfast until 14 to 16 hours later. And so that helps you clean your system. It's a little bit different than the 80% rule, but it's easier for most of us to follow. I will also say that another attribute of those who are in these blue zones is that a lot of their food is plant-based. About 95 to 100% of their dinners and so on are plant-based. Again, not 100% necessary, but adding more percentage of fruits and vegetables and plant-based proteins to your diet makes a difference. Now, the question of wine. That has gone back and forth since the beginning of these blue zones. They all happen to be places where people do drink in moderate amounts and mostly wine and mostly red wines. And I was able to meet with some of the geroscientists that actually discovered the property called resveratrol in red wines and the ability to put this resveratrol in a pill that you can get in any CVS. So it's called resveratrol. There are several types of them. They're all over the counter. And according to the scientist that I spoke to, he said it's like drinking 1,000 glasses of wine, but without the fun. So if you do believe that non-alcohol is better for you, and you don't want to drink 1,000 glasses of red wine in one day, you can simply take a pill. The other, which is, I think, a much more subtle part of their lifestyle, is this feeling of belonging. It's very closely related to life purpose, but it is more a concept of friendship, that they have someone to call upon and somebody who calls upon them. And when they get up in the morning, they are not alone. And we have said, this is maybe the 3rd or 4th time on this podcast that I have said that our former Surgeon General announced and made a big speech to our nation that isolation and not having friends and not being connected with relationships does for our bodies what smoking a pack of cigarettes would do every single day. And related to that is what some have called the right tribe. But let me tell you that here at the Ageless Traveler, many people in the field of public relations and travel have called us a tribe. And what that really means, and I like to use the word like-minded people. I don't use the word tribe. Somehow I feel it's appropriating the cultures of other people who really do belong to tribes. And I am here in Palm Springs with some wonderful friends who are tribal. The fact is that when you are surrounded by like-minded people, it helps. That does not mean that everybody has to agree with you, have the same politics as you. In fact, some of those external likes and dislikes are rather irrelevant. What makes somebody like-minded? They laugh at the same jokes. They enjoy the same books. They get angry, maybe, at the same sort of things. And they have a community. And that's the really big word here. There's a feeling of belonging to a community. Now, wait a minute, Adrian. You didn't tell me not to have cheesecake. You didn't tell me that I have to go to the gym. Why don't all these people go to the gym? Why aren't they all on a diet? Well, that's the whole point. None of them are. And they're still living to 100 and over because they do this without thinking this is part of their cultures. So the modern application of this sort of thing for you and me is that we have to force it a little bit. And when we come back, I'm going to make it much easier for you to live in your self-created blue zone by observing and immersing yourself in the culture of real blue zones as you travel there. So don't you guys go anywhere. We're taking a trip to the blue zones. We'll be right back. If you've been thinking about a cruise, I've definitely got you covered with Cruises It. Now, we have just become affiliated with them. And who are they? Well, Cruises It is the top agency for all the main cruise lines and some of the less known cruise lines as well. Cruises It has access to booking space that's been open years in advance, so you can get the best cabins. That's just number one. But they also make the prices lower. The cruise lines give Cruises It their own exclusive agency discounts. And if you're not from the cruise line, they have their own agency discounts that would apply as well. So you get both any discounts you would normally get on the cruise line, plus additional discounts that are given exclusively to Cruises It because they bring in so much business. On top of all those discount perks, when you book with them, you get the best rate guaranteed. And this is because Cruise Fare Watch system takes place. Now, what Cruises It does is it tracks the pricing until the final payment date. So you keep in mind that to get the best rate guaranteed, you have to use my site. We have affiliated with them specifically. I sat down, I met with them in Tucson, Arizona. I met with Marianne Weather. We've now become good friends. She gave me a direct line, not only a link, which you can certainly use right away, but if you have questions, even a specific phone number. Cruises It offers this not just to anyone that is one of our followers, but if you have friends and family, you can bring them in too. So just take a look at the show notes and you will see our dedicated phone line and our dedicated link. Happy sailing. And this is Adrienne Berg, and we are here in part 2 of your Passport to Longevity. And we are getting around to actually traveling. It's very important that you take a look and listen to part 1, which explains the cognitive features of travel, how it strengthens your cells, how it strengthens your mitochondria, which is the sheaths around your cells, all the science-based part, the geroscience-based part, why travel in general anywhere, whether it's a weekend, a vacation, a cruise, one of those 257-day cruises or a 3-day cruise, it makes no difference. It will contribute, travel will contribute to your longevity and has been proven. But now we're getting to the fun part. What if you actually wanted to travel as your next vacation or your next sightseeing trip to one of the 5 parts of the world that were initially identified as blue zones, where people on a regular basis, sometimes 10 times more than those surrounding them in other communities, live until 100 or past the age of 100. Well, there are some of these places I've been, some of them I have not. One of them is right near my home. So let's take a look at Ikaria. And Ikaria is in Greece. Many of you know that it's an Aegean island. But of all of the 5 places, they have the lowest rates of dementia and the lowest rates of middle-aged mortality. Now, it also happens to be a honeymoon spot. You have the opportunity to go there from almost any one of the Greek islands. Now, we know that Santorini and Mykonos are so popular. I've had the pleasure of going on a goulet, which is a special type of small Turkish boat. It takes only about 8 to 10 people. It goes to the more obscure and smaller islands, but you can get to Ikaria fairly easily because it is a well-known, as I said, ceremony, anniversary, and honeymoon spot. We have friends who's born there and relatives. who are still there. They live what I call the cracker barrel life. They get up in the morning, they walk, they garden, they plant, they do functional movement, they clean their own homes, they have their own bread that they bake, they walk to a community center. Sometimes it's a type of pub that actually does serve red wine, fish, definitely have Mediterranean-based diet, as we discussed. And then they sit around the Cracker Barrel. If this was the Old West here in the U.S. Or the Midwest too, we would call it the Cracker Barrel. It's an old-fashioned, quiet, slow life with lots of conversation, lots of fun, and lots of friends. Very different from Loma Linda, California. Loma Linda, California is in an urban area. The folks there are Seventh-day Adventists. They are very religious. They do not drink at all. So that's, forget the resveratrol, that's out of the picture. But they are imbued with a life purpose. They are imbued with senses of belonging to each other and by each other. They also have a lifestyle of little indulgence when it comes to food. They also do exercise, work, and they are highly functioning when it comes to taking care of business. These are folks that are icons, faith. And right with the rest of the blue zones, they have an enormous power to outlive the Californians, even the ones that are sharing a salad and always on a diet and always in the gym. Nevertheless, the folks at Loma Linda do, as a group, outlive the rest of us in the great state of California. Now, the blue zone you may have heard of the most is Okinawa. And the reason that you may have heard of it is the Okinawa diet. The Okinawa diet is part of the Japanese longevity home run because Japan in general has the longest lived women on the planet. And soy, miso soup, other things that we would consider salted foods, foods that give you high blood pressure, do not. There's also potatoes and starches, particularly sweet potatoes, all things that we would take out of our diet. But the Okinawa diet is an extremely plant-based diet. Yes, there is drinking, and yes, there is wine, but the rest is very much the same. A slow, relationship-oriented, purpose-driven life, reducing stress. That doesn't mean stress-free by any means, reducing stress with an island culture. So though Loma Linda is not an island, we already have 2 out of the 3 blue zones as an island. Now, we will talk about the other 2 when we come back, so don't you guys go anywhere, and we'll be right back. We'll also talk about the fact that these are great places to visit. Don't go anywhere. Did you know that 3,000 people receive the Ageless Traveler newsletter every single Tuesday, and it's free of charge? Well, you simply subscribe on our website, agelesstraveler.com, when you see the pop-up, or take a look at the resource section that's in the show notes accompanying this episode. You'll also see how directly you can subscribe to our newsletter. Now, what will you find in there? Well, every single week, you will get news you can use about travel, cultural experiences you can enjoy, suggestions for luxury travel for less, and yes, I answer your questions. And you can even send me those questions by text or voicemail, and you'll see just how to do it when you receive your Travel Tuesday newsletter. Plenty of discounts, plenty of inspiration, so that you never stop traveling. That's agelesstraveler.com. Take a look at the pop-up, subscribe, or take a look at our resource list accompanying this and every episode, so that you get a direct link to Travel Tuesday. And we're back, and we're breezing through the 5 original blue zones. Now, let me tell you that blue zones were identified by Dan Butner and by the National Institute of Health and also by National Geographic. These were the first 5 to be identified as places where people regularly live past the age of 100, and certainly multiple times statistically than folks living near them, but around them. All of these places, Okinawa Island, Ikaria, which I mentioned is a wonderful place for celebrations, are great places to visit. Now, we have a little bit different when it comes to Loma Linda because that's in California, and actually is in a nice area, very good for a road trip, but not quite the kind of thing you might get on a plane to visit specifically. Nevertheless, you can identify the same elements of the Blue Zone lifestyle in all of these three. Now, this next one, Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, is interesting because it not only has, again, lowest rates of middle-age mortality, it's a strong faith-based community, but it's also in Costa Rica. And for those of you who know, parts of Central America, like Belize and Costa Rica, have a very high quality of life in general and have become magnets for us ageless travelers to buy second homes. So if you have been thinking about where to have a second home and you're particularly interested in the health aspects of living elsewhere, you certainly are going to be interested in this particular Blue Zone in Costa Rica. And then last but not least, a place that I have visited more than once and can attest to the beauty of the lifestyle, and that is Sardinia. Now, I have to say that Sardinia, one of the islands in Italy, also has the best pizza in the world, but don't say I said so because I'm not 100% sure that pizza is what you should be mainlining if you do want the greatest of longevity and live in the Blue Zones. Nevertheless, folks do eat it. Of course, if it's a home-baked bread, homemade cheese from Sardinia, if you are growing your own tomatoes, it's a whole other ball game, that kind of pizza. I will say that a lot of pizza in Italy does not have red sauce, but it's white pizza. Nevertheless, this is a mountainous region and has the world's greatest concentration of men who are centenarians. Having been there, I can tell you this. This is the kind of place that feels like you're always walking uphill. Now, that's not possible, right? It's not physically possible, but having been there and done it so many times, I can tell you everything is uphill in Sardinia. So what this means, of course, is that you're getting a lot of the right kind of exercise for your heart. Heart is the number one killer in the United States, and particularly the number one killer for men. And so if you're always increasing your heart's capacity, and you're constantly, from the day you were born, doing cardio exercises just so that you can get to the grocery store and get a quart of milk. If you're also having your own cow and you're getting your own milk from that, and you're eating your own homegrown plant-based diet, and you are having occasional meat, there's more meat in Sardinia than some of the other Mediterranean diets, and you are actually on the Mediterranean, well, you might just live, but you're not. You'll be going to all of these places for their wonderful opportunity to observe the lifestyle. And every one of them has terrific UNESCO sites and places to visit and see. And then you're home. Now what? Well, we'll take our last break of this particular monologue on your passport to longevity and come back. And I'll tell you very seriously, now what? So don't you guys go anywhere. You may have been reading in our Travel Tuesday newsletters that travel increases your longevity. Over and over again, the research shows why. You make more connections, you thwart loneliness, and you simply have a great time. So why not get started now from your armchair? Simply go to agelesstraveler.com and see our invitation that asks you right on the homepage to join our Facebook salon. We call it a salon, not a group, because it's a place to meet people, to connect, to travel together, to share your travel experiences. So simply go to agelesstraveler.com and join our Facebook salon. And now we're back, and we're talking about living a Blue Zone style life, which you can create for yourself at home. You create it by constant movement, functional activities like gardening. You create it by walking instead of riding. You create it by cultivating friends and friendship. You cultivate travel. You cultivate activities. You join clubs. You belong. Easier said than done. Why? Because where you may live, and I certainly am a person who's lived in the great state of New York, the great state of New Jersey, the great state of California, and in general, these were hectic, urban, community where a blue zone lifestyle was not provided. This is changing. Public policy is beginning to realize the enormous cost of caregiving, the enormous cost of dementia, the enormous cost of decline as we age, while we are continuing to grow our longevity. But what kind of longevity? Not the healthy longevity that we're talking about in blue zones, because there we're not just talking about aging, we're talking about aging healthy, not just lifespan, but health span. And because it's so expensive to have long lives with low quality of health, more money is being put in by local communities, by governments, by state governments in the US, by counties all over the world. Singapore leading the way, by the way, Thailand coming next, Vietnam coming and pledging this year to be the third in longevity health policy. That's not health policy. Health policy, curing, getting medicines for people, getting doctors to people. This is preventative medicine. We put very little money in it, but we're beginning to see that that's a mistake, and there's something you can do about it. You can, on a consumer level, praise every single food store that you go to because they put healthier foods at eye level, so you're not grabbing a box of sugar all the time. You don't always have to complain about those who don't. It's actually more powerful to praise those that do. Use some of that plant-based menu item once in a while and praise the restaurant for including it. Take a look at the bakery and take a look at the sugar-free and praise them. I've gone almost to 131 countries trying to find, this is going to shock you, sugar-free ice cream. Very rarely, outside of a supermarket, do I find one. There are very few gelatos, and yet there are vegan ice creams. Ask, ask, ask. So make sure that everyone from your local supermarket to the food manager on your cruise knows that you want to eat healthfully. Make sure that when you vote, and this is the most powerful thing you can do, you'll tell everyone from your congressman to your mayor that you do want public parks, that you do want places that's safe to walk, that you do want good lighting at night so that if you are working all day, you can stroll safely and start doing your exercises later. Encourage, praise those particularly local gyms and the biggest chains for giving special discounts for older exercisers. And remember, encourage your family, because aging actually starts around the age of 30, which is why you're hearing so many statistics on middle-aged mortality. There's a lot of it. And for those of you who know, I've suffered from that with my father passing away at age 42. This is a terrible problem for those of you who have this in your family, and there are small children. So there are so many reasons that you should loudly and proudly say, I want to live longer, and it's not all genetics. So your passport to longevity includes understanding how travel makes you cognitively and physically stronger, healthier, adds years to your life as well as life to your years. That's part 2. Now that we're speaking about, it includes going to some of these places and putting them on your bucket list to observe how these folks live. And finally, being an advocate for policies, laws, and budgets that increase the possibility of longevity all around you. And you know what I'm going to say? Please, you've got the like-minded people, the tribe, right? Right here at The Ageless Traveler. Simply join our salon. It's free. You'll see how to do that in the show notes. Simply become a member so easily with a free subscription to our weekly newsletter, Travel Tuesday. You'll see how to do that in the show notes. And above all, never stop traveling.